oriented, and the kids will love it, and they'll come out asking questions, which I love.
It transports you back. You can almost get the feel that you were actually there, because laying in that hammock, like, oh my goodness.
I think it's really interesting because it shows you exactly how they slept and how they ate and how they went through life.
Alive, and that it helps you to understand. Like, rather than looking at pictures, you can actually see what they were in, and you can actually understand it.
I think it makes me appreciate being an American, knowing these people went through these things to put me where I am now.
I'd say come see it.
Yeah, we were a little bit leery because of the age of our children, 4 and 7, but they enjoyed it so much. It really kind of surprised us. We thought it'd be more for us, the parents, but no, they loved it.
They had a good time.
Yeah, they had a great time.
So come aboard.
By this walking through history that they're able to do, and they're able to see the hammocks and see the officer's wardroom and sit in the captain's cabin and have this whole immersive experience that you're never going to get at most types of museums. So this is a really wonderful experience for them, and they have no idea what they're missing out on, and they come on board and they keep coming back.
For the people who are watching this, why don't you tell us a bit more about how you started in your community engagement process?
Well, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here in this beautiful space. And so I am not from Baltimore, but I got here as fast as I could. And when I arrived, it was for a federal clerkship, actually. I graduated from law school, so I was born in D.C., grew up in Montgomery County, went away for a long time, came back for a federal clerkship. And my husband and I settled in Fells Point. And we sort of instantly realized that there were a lot of ways to get engaged in Baltimore. I think that's one of the great things about Baltimore is that it is easy to get involved, whether it's a nonprofit or you're a community association or at a neighborhood rec center or whatever. So I joined my neighborhood association and the Fells Point Residents Association, and eventually I became secretary and just started seizing opportunities. I was initially really interested in transportation because on my first day of work, I went to take the number 10 bus from Fells Point to downtown, and it did not come. And I was just sort of frustrated by the lack of reliable transit in Baltimore. And so when the Red Line started, this was many years ago, when the Red Line started, they went to the Fells Point Residents Association and said, hey, we want you guys to have input into what the Fells Point station will look like. And so I volunteered, and I got very involved then with the station and what it would look like, and a station area advisory committee. They thought I was good, I guess, so then they put me on the citywide community board to work citywide on Red Line issues. But yeah, I really just started. My husband used to joke that if I ever went missing from a walk, he would just follow my 311 posts. Because it was like, missing tree there, tree stump that needs to be done there, and so it just started getting to know how things worked in Baltimore slowly but surely, and loved doing the work and loved meeting people, right? Just so fascinated to meet people from different places and hear their stories, or from Baltimore who had roots here, and so just little by little started getting more and more involved.
Well, we also use these Her Story films, videos, when working with students, and part of what we're trying to do is show role models, but also we want to share with students that you don't start as Comptroller of the State of Maryland. So think back a little bit.
Yeah.
I know you didn't go to school all the time in Maryland, but what were some of your favorite parts of school and some of your least favorite things in school?
Sure. So I went to a small Catholic school from 1st to 8th grade in Washington, D.C., called St. Anne's Academy, and then I went to Walt Whitman High School in Bethesda for high school before going off to Dartmouth for undergrad and University of Texas for School of Law, for law school. So 4 very different schools. I honestly, throughout all of my schooling, my favorite things were the students and the teachers, right? The people, it's so interesting to learn from different people, to make friends. I will say, one of the pieces of advice I've given my cousins and nephews and whatnot when they're going to new school is involve yourself in activities with people who are not like you, right? I met a lot of great people in my high school, especially my senior year, who were not like me who became some of my closest friends.
Nice.
I was a rower in high school as well, and met a lot of great people through crew and the newspaper that I did and whatnot. But and then in college, I also was very involved in helping get a group off the ground called the DREAM program, which created mentoring programs between public housing and colleges and college students. And I met a ton of people doing that who I would never have met before. We were in totally different circles. But I would also just go do things like an outing club trip or a lecture or whatever there was going on. Even if none of my friends would come, because I was like, well, whatever, I'll meet people there, it's fine. And if I don't meet people there, it'll still be interesting, So I met a lot of people sort of just signing up for things and doing them. And I love that. I will say, I think I learned too late how important it is to talk to your teachers. I sort of always had this I don't want to bother them, I don't want to bother them after. But really, they want to be bothered, right? That's why they're doing this work. And so I try to remind my kids, no, go to the after-school stuff, talk to your teachers. They really want you to. And I mean, I had a number of really phenomenal teachers who still I think about today.
You still have contact with them to some degree?
I don't have a ton of contact with most of my teachers and professors, although some of my law school professors donated to my first campaign, so that was pretty cool.
That's a good sign.
Yeah, it was really neat. But I still, my admin law professor in law school was amazing. One of my professors from undergrad, Annalise Orlek, amazing feminist, incredible history professor. I took all of her courses. I actually got to introduce her at an event that Hopkins did about her latest book. So that was a very, very special experience for me, because she really changed how I viewed history and what I was doing and who I was. Helped me become, I would say, who I am in college. I still very much remember, I'm not in touch with her, my 7th and 8th grade social studies teacher, Miss Schaefer. She was fantastic. So yeah, teachers are great. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a great message to students about persistence and also using the resources of teachers and just getting out there.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if during these politically contentious times, how are you finding balance and ways of keeping things moving and getting things done?
Great question. So balance, I sort of think balance, the idea of you find balance and then it's one and done, is a myth that people created to make us feel like we're not doing it right. So every day is a different day. Some days I get to see my kids a lot. Other days I don't get to see my kids a lot. Some days I get enough sleep. Other days I don't get enough sleep. So I think every day is slightly different, and it's sort of just, you have to constantly be evaluating how you're doing and what you need to keep going, and to be mindful of that. I also am a woman of faith and find that it's really important for me to take time to go to church, and that is very centering and important for me. I also, to keep going, I find inspiration from my team. I have an amazing team in the office of the Comptroller. I could do nothing without them. So making sure that we're keeping each other going and holding each other accountable is important. I think also just, my kids, they inspire me. I want to build a better world for them, but also for them, their friends, and for the kids who I see, who I meet around the world and around the city and the state. I think it's on each of us to leave the world a little bit better than we found it, using the gifts that God gave us.
A little bit about this, but what do you tell your kids about, your children, your 2 children, about what to expect if they would choose a life of public service? I'm sure they would like you around more, but yet, how do you explain to them kind of your role in it and
Sure.
other behaviors that they might want to have as transferable skills or something in their lives?
I mean, I think public service can take so many different, there's so many different roles. There's elected office, there's even a wide variety of roles in elected office, but you can work in an agency, you're a public servant there, you can work for your city or your county, you can work for the federal government. So there's so many different types of public service. So I don't really, I think, I know they understand that I believe in public service and that helping one another is a really important part of who we are as a family. They don't know me as anything other than an elected official because I ran for delegate when I was on maternity leave with my son. So mom having to go to fundraisers and like giving speeches and having signs with my name on them to give out to people for their yards is like normal for them. They recognize that it is not what every parent does. Although it's funny, my daughter is friends with the daughter of another elected official in Baltimore City. They go to the same school, and it's very funny because I think the girls enjoy like talking about their parents,
As we would.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but I think they get what I do. I try to explain to them why I can't be around as much, but also that it's not just my job. Lots of parents can't be around all the time or as much as they'd like for their kids. That's sort of just how it is, right? That's the society that we've created and the need to work and be out there. So I think, my kids are good. Like, they're very fortunate, and I do the best mom I can be for them, but part of being the best mom I can be for them is making sure, like, everybody else's kids are okay too.
You mentioned some of your teachers that were important to you. Tell us a little bit more about some of the other role models you've had and why they were so important to you.
Sure. I was raised by very involved parents. My mom helped start the home care program at Children's Hospital in DC and then went back to school to become a nurse practitioner. She's a pediatric nurse practitioner at a community health center in Adams Morgan for many years. So she's a great role model. She's exceedingly patient, much more patient than I am. My dad also is dedicated public servant for many years. I have a great family. I have great little brothers who are, I've been fortunate to be able to work for some really wonderful people. I worked for the campaign of a man named Paul Wellstone, who was a U.S. Senator. I worked on his campaign in 2002. He unfortunately and his wife and daughter died in a plane crash 10 days before the election. But he was a really incredible force for good. People at the time called him the conscience of the Senate. After he died so unexpectedly, it was amazing to watch some of his Senate colleagues just cry. Grown men sort of just break down because they couldn't imagine the U.S. Senate without him. I feel really fortunate to have been around folks like that. And, some of my professors have been amazing. Some of the people I worked with at the law firm that I worked at, Brown Goldstein and Levy, or when I worked at a think tank in DC, I've been really fortunate to have really good bosses, really who took the time to help me get better at things and who worked with me on them and who were appropriately frustrated with me when I didn't do what I was supposed to do. And so I feel fortunate in that respect too.
Sounds like you're paying it forward very well.
I try.
The Maryland Women's Heritage Center is, of course, very interested in diverse women's history.
Yep.
And we're very anxious to know what happens in schools in a good way and what resources. Who have your children learned about, and what are some of their favorite stories that you think they'll remember? And men and women, but particularly women.
Sure. So it's funny. There's this show on TV called The Who Was Show, and it's this very cute, funny show about historical figures. And there's one about Susan B. Anthony. And of course, my daughter loves that one, and wanted to dress up as Susan B. Anthony for Halloween, which I was like, of course you can. So we're working on that. It's basically like a long black dress, So I think she has been inspired by some of the figures in women's history she's seen in that way. My son actually, the first project he did for Black History Month a couple years ago was all on Elijah Cummings. Which was very cool. And we talked a lot about Elijah. It was after he had died, but we talked a lot about his work to desegregate public swimming pools in Baltimore and his experience as a child trying to desegregate the Riverside swimming pool, which is very close to where we live, and what that must have been like. And I think actually for him, and perhaps it'll be like this for my daughter later on, it's in some ways less about the gender, and it's having local historic figures. Like Elijah lived here and went to the pool right there. It helps you imagine, I think, wow, these really important people in American history lived where I live, right? It's not some foreign, far away, right? It makes it feel more real in a way, which I think is important. So we do talk more about, like, you know, Marylanders like Harriet Tubman and the work that she did, and we lived in Fells Point, really close to where Frederick Douglass lived. And so I think, you know, I have tried to talk about, you know, Maryland's rich with amazing history, and so talk about some of that. Yeah.
Some amazing people.
Yeah,
Men and
so
women,
lucky,
right? And,
totally.
Right. And
Yeah.
we're still peeling the onion to tell their stories.
Yeah.
So, in your current job, when and how did you decide you wanted to be the comptroller as part of your career pathway? And is it different than you expected, or what you can say about that?
Yeah, so when I was a member of the Maryland House of Delegates, I learned a lot about what the Office of the Comptroller does. And when the previous comptroller decided to run for governor and there was going to be an open seat, I started thinking a lot more about not what the comptroller was doing, but what it could do. And that as the elected CFO of the state, essentially, the comptroller really needed to be not just a bean counter, but an office that was improving people's economic situation, that was speaking about and talking about ways to tackle the racial wealth divide in the state, that was talking about how we make Maryland more affordable for families, and that was making government work better, because it's an agency that every Marylander has to interact with because of the taxes, and every business because of Board of Public Works and taxes. And so the comptroller is a really unique role because it just touches everybody in some way. And so I decided to throw my hat in, not because of what the comptroller was doing at the time, but because I thought that we needed to reimagine how the Office of the Comptroller could improve Maryland and improve life for Marylanders, for communities, for businesses, and more.
You have a very public face on that kind of process that is a little different than I'm sure some of your counterparts in other states.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. You know, not every state has an elected comptroller, and most comptrollers in states do not run their taxes or unclaimed property or have a Board of Public Works, which oversees state contracting. So the role of comptroller in Maryland is really unique to Maryland. I have counterparts who are state financial officers, but what they do is very different. Yeah.
From where you're sitting now, you are still a very young professional woman. And
Thank you.
Yeah. And I don't see retirement in your future, like in the next 60 years.
Oh,
but
God.
Have you thought about, you know, sort of as how your career pathway, where might it take you next? If you have some feelings about that or thoughts about it? Or?
You know, it's funny. I found this note that I wrote myself when I was a kid. I must have been in like middle school because my handwriting is not great. Many years ago I found it. It's this little note, and it says, "When I grow up, I want a job that," and it's sort of, and some of the things are that helps people, that is something I could do and come back to, and that allows me to travel. And so I've checked off some of those boxes, but it just sort of made me laugh when I found it recently, because I feel really fortunate to be in a job where I can help people, right, and where I can do this work. And so I am going to run for re-election, which I'm excited about. We are really midstream. You know, we adopted a new vision as an agency to work in partnership to create a state that is more equitable, that is more resilient, and that is more prosperous, so that every Marylander can reach their full potential. And we have 3 core priorities dedicated to that: making government work better, ensuring the resources of our agency reach the people of Maryland, and ensuring that we are setting up Maryland for long-term economic success. And I think all of that, you know, also breeds into like making Maryland more affordable for families. And so we are not there yet. And we have started projects in each of those spaces, but they're not done. Like, we're modernizing much IT, which is super outdated. We've launched a huge campaign around ensuring that folks who are eligible for the Earned Income Tax Credit actually claim it and get that money. We're doing important reports on the economic situation in Maryland. We're about to release one on housing in Maryland. So I really want to make sure that that we have completed our major modernization, that we've institutionalized these changes to ensure that people get the resources of this agency long after I've gone, and that our reporting and this transparency we've imbued really continues. And so I am running for re-election to do that. After that, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to be a Louis Goldstein. I don't think I'm going to do this job for 40 years. But I'm not sure where I'll end up next. I think I feel really fortunate to be in the position I am in, where I have been entrusted with this great responsibility by Marylanders. I take it really seriously. And so I want to do this work at the top of my game and the best I can until Marylanders and I have decided it's time for me to go do something else.
Go back and look at your middle school memoir.
Yeah, then maybe I'll travel. Yeah.
Well, we've talked a lot about many different things. Any final things that come to mind, particularly about either her story or women's history, or about your role in messages to students?
Sure. I think, look, we often talk about, making sure you have a seat at the table. And I think it was Elizabeth Warren who said, if you don't have a seat at the table, you're probably on the menu, right? And then Shirley Chisholm, right? If there's no seat for there, bring a folding chair. I also think it's really important for us as women to look out for other women. One seat at the table is not enough, right? So if you have a seat at the table, bring another one. Bring two more. Make sure that you are pulling other women along with you, right? I think if you look at sort of the most successful and the most amazing women in history, like they did that. They were looking out for and working with other women. And that helped make them successful in changing the barriers and removing the barriers that they were working to overcome. So I'm really proud of the team I've built, and it has a lot of great women in it. And so, I think but at the end of the day, it all takes hard work. Eleanor Roosevelt said, the future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. And I like to add, and who are willing to put in the time and work to reach them. So I think it's have that vision, but recognize that it may take some time to get there. A final thing I'll just say is there are multiple paths to the mountaintop. Right? So you may have a vision, you may have something you want to do and care about. There's lots of different ways to get there, right? So if you're thrown off course a little bit, maybe it's a scenic detour and you get to see some new thing that you hadn't seen, but don't worry, you can keep going to where you were originally headed, just taking a different path. So, really excited to keep doing this work, and really grateful for all that you've done, for Herstory, for the Maryland Women's Heritage Center, and more. Thank you.
I guess one of the things that was probably the best part of the celebration at the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame at the Governor's House, and we've been doing this work for some time.
Yes.
But to see the Comptroller, to see the Lieutenant Governor, to see Secretary of State, to see Nancy Pelosi in her role at the federal level. Am I forgetting somebody? Maybe forgetting somebody.
That was
That's
exciting.
Yeah.
Humbling for
exactly.
me, to be sure.
And so I said,
like,
I'm not moving out of the state of Maryland. So for that, we're very grateful. But we also know that, and we're glad to see that that even in Maryland, we still have a lot of work to do for a lot of people.
We have a lot of work.
We're so glad you're a part of that.
Thank you.
So we're thrilled that we had Brooke Lierman here today from the Comptroller's Office to share her story. And the Maryland Women Heritage Center, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Just Kumar, and today we're over here. We're in the harbor in beautiful downtown Baltimore, checking out a lot of the boats. And right now we are on the submarine. This was actually the last submarine that was commissioned during the World War II. This submarine actually sunk the last boat of the war in World War II. So it's going to be a great show. Stay tuned. Wow, look at this. I'm hanging out in the middle of a submarine in beautiful downtown Baltimore. I tell you, it's a fantastic day today. Well, I'm here inside the hull of the sub right now. I tell you, it's great down here. If you look around, you've got some torpedoes, it looks like. You got some things that talk about the history of the sub. I believe this submarine was actually in World War II, believe it or not. And you have the engine room back here. It's just great to be down here and experiencing this part of history. All right, now there's a lot of tours on board. You're going to hear people in the background, maybe walking in front of the camera, but we're going to be taking our own tour through the submarine, so come along. All right, I mean, just looking around, you have some beds up here, and you have some beds over here. Right? Can you imagine sleeping right on top of a torpedo? That would be something else. This is pretty incredible, just to see this part of history. All right, well, as I promised you, let's go through. All right, so follow me. This is pretty wild. Come on in here. Wow, check this out. Look at this. Isn't this awesome? You know, I'm not much of a marine person, but from the looks of it, this looks like Control Central, where things happen and take place. Well, I believe over here is the power controls for the submarine, and then you have some generator controls and things like that. Then we have a map over here. I guess this is where they chart out their plans on how they're going to be charting around. This is incredible. This is just an incredible history. Look at this. Can you imagine, like, captains of the submarine planning their strategies? I mean, like, they start off somewhere over here on the east coast of the United States, and they make a chart that they're going to go somewhere else. I mean, this is incredible. Just think about this. Think about the history and the places that this submarine has gone to, and the people that lived here for the period of time during the World War II. And in fact, an interesting piece of note about this submarine, this was the last submarine that was operated during the end of the World War II. So I think that's great to see that we can actually tour this thing, and it's over here in Baltimore.
The historic sites of the Chesapeake Bay Gateways Network.